Before dawn, soldiers quietly abandoned their fortifications, leaving behind rows of black cannons aimed toward an enemy too cautious to advance. When the opposing army finally entered, they discovered the terrifying artillery was nothing more than painted logs resting on wooden supports. No explosions were required because the illusion had already delayed thousands of troops and protected an army slipping safely into the darkness. History celebrates battlefield strength, yet some victories began with paper, paint, rumors, and enemies persuaded to fear forces that never existed. The greatest military bluffs worked because commanders understood a simple truth: people rarely react to reality, only to what they believe. A convincing lie needed details, timing, witnesses, and enough truth surrounding it that doubt became more dangerous than accepting the deception. Sometimes a single abandoned bag redirected attention, while elsewhere an invented officer carried secret documents from a life that never existed. Entire divisions waited for imaginary invasions, wooden weapons threatened real soldiers, and carefully managed radio messages created armies from empty fields. These 4 operations did not merely confuse individual guards, they manipulated commanders responsible for protecting cities, coastlines, and entire military fronts. Each bluff succeeded differently, but all transformed ordinary objects into weapons, powerful enough to change decisions before the real fighting began. The first deception appeared outside Washington during the American Civil War, where Confederate positions at Centreville overlooked nervous Union forces nearby. After victory at First Bull Run, Confederate troops occupied strong earthworks, but their artillery and manpower were far less impressive than appearances suggested. Union Commander George McClellan already tended toward caution, frequently estimating enemy forces larger than the numbers actually standing against his army. Confederate officers recognized that uncertainty could protect them, especially when distant observers could see fortifications but not inspect every weapon closely. Soldiers gathered straight logs, shaped their ends, painted them dark, and mounted them where ordinary artillery pieces would normally appear. From Union observation points, these wooden substitutes looked convincingly like cannons, particularly through mist, distance, and the expectations of worried commanders. They became known as Quaker Guns, borrowing the name of a religious community famous for pacifism and opposition to physical violence. The joke was perfect: these weapons threatened armies while remaining incapable of firing anything, including the smallest piece of metal. Confederate defenders also maintained camps, guard routines, smoke, and movement, making the positions appear active even when withdrawal preparations had begun. Every visible detail encouraged Union officers to imagine a larger force supported by artillery capable of punishing any careless advance. McClellan's army possessed overwhelming strength, yet intelligence reports and deceptive appearances repeatedly convinced him that aggressive movement carried unacceptable risk. While Union leaders studied the threatening lines, Confederate Commander Joseph Johnston prepared to abandon Centreville and move south towards safer positions. During March 1862, troops withdrew from the fortifications, carrying useful supplies while leaving wooden guns behind to preserve the illusion. Campfires and remaining activity helped conceal the movement, allowing thousands of soldiers to disappear without immediately inviting a powerful pursuit. When Union troops finally advanced, they entered deserted works expecting danger, and instead found logs painted black beneath abandoned artillery coverings. Photographers recorded the discovery, preserving images of soldiers posing beside wooden cannons that had delayed a real army without ammunition. Northern newspapers reacted with embarrassment and ridicule because cautious commanders had treated pieces of timber like a serious military threat. The deception did not destroy Union forces, but it bought valuable time and protected Johnston's withdrawal from a numerically superior opponent. More importantly, it demonstrated that an enemy's imagination could supply firepower when actual guns, crews, and ammunition were unavailable. A painted log worked because distant observers completed the illusion themselves, adding imagined danger to an object that possessed none. Military deception often succeeds through complexity, but Centreville proved that simplicity becomes powerful when it reinforces a fear already present. The Quaker guns required no advanced technology, secret agents, or coded messages. Only carpenters, paint, distance, and a cautious enemy. Yet wooden cannons merely persuaded observers to hesitate. The next operation deliberately placed false plans where enemy soldiers were expected to find them. In the desert outside Beersheba, British intelligence would turn an apparently careless mistake into a message designed for Ottoman commanders. By 1917, British forces in Palestine had failed twice to break Ottoman defenses around Gaza, making another obvious attack dangerously predictable. General Edmund Allenby needed to seize Beersheba first, opening the Ottoman flank and gaining access to wells essential for mounted troops. However, Ottoman commanders understood Beersheba's importance and could reinforce it quickly if British preparations revealed the true direction of attack. British planners therefore created a broader deception campaign, suggesting Gaza remained the main objective while Beersheba would receive only secondary attention. False camps appeared near Gaza, movements were staged openly, and radio traffic encouraged Ottoman listeners to focus on the familiar coastal route. Meanwhile, genuine preparations for Beersheba were hidden through night movement, strict security, and carefully controlled activity away from enemy observation. Among the most famous elements was the Haversack Ruse, an operation designed to make secret documents appear accidentally lost during reconnaissance. An officer rode near Ottoman lines, carrying a bag filled with false plans, personal items, money, and details supporting the invented story. The bag was reportedly marked to suggest its owner had been injured, making its loss appear urgent, embarrassing, and completely unplanned. Inside were documents indicating Gaza remained the principal target, while an attack toward Beersheba would serve mainly as a misleading diversion. Other materials supported the deception, including information that could help Ottoman intelligence interpret additional false signals and military preparations. The trick depended on psychology documents stolen from an enemy appear more trustworthy than information deliberately delivered through an obvious channel. Ottoman patrols recovered the bag and passed its contents upward, exactly as British planners had hoped when arranging the apparent accident. Yet historians debate how decisive this single episode was, because Allenby's deception involved many coordinated measures beyond one convenient discovery. That uncertainty makes the operation more interesting, not less, because successful deception rarely depends upon one theatrical gesture alone. The abandoned bag worked inside a larger pattern of camps, communications, delays, and visible preparations, all pointing toward the same conclusion. On October 31st, British and Commonwealth forces attacked Beersheba, reaching the town before defenders could destroy every vital well. The famous mounted charge by Australian light horsemen helped seize the position late that day, breaking the eastern end of Ottoman defenses. The victory opened the way toward Gaza and eventually Jerusalem, while the deception campaign became part of the battle's enduring legend. Whether the Haversack transformed Ottoman decisions alone remains disputed, but the false story clearly matched the broader British effort. It represented a timeless intelligence principle: the strongest lie is often information the enemy believes was never intended for them. A careless-looking loss can feel more authentic than a brilliant message, especially when money, personal letters, and embarrassment surround the documents. Beersheba's deception relied on a living courier escaping without the bag, but the next bluff created an officer who had never lived. British intelligence would give that imaginary man photographs, receipts, romance, debts, and one final journey carrying papers meant for German hands. In 1943, Allied leaders planned to invade Sicily, a target so obvious that German commanders expected an attack somewhere nearby. Because geography pointed directly towards Sicily, British intelligence needed Germany to believe the Allies would choose Greece and Sardinia instead. Naval officer Ewan Montagu and intelligence planner Charles Cholmondeley developed an extraordinary scheme, using a body carrying convincing secret correspondence. The plan became Operation Mincemeat, combining forged documents with an invented identity detailed enough to survive any suspicious examination. The body would represent Major William Martin, a Royal Marines officer supposedly killed when his aircraft crashed into the sea. Planners filled his pockets with ordinary evidence of life keys, tickets, receipts, cigarettes, identification cards, and overdue financial notices. They also created a fictional fiancée named Pam, adding her photograph and affectionate letters to make the invented officer emotionally believable. Every small imperfection mattered, because a perfectly organized identity might look manufactured to experienced intelligence officers searching for deception. The crucial documents suggested Allied operations would target Greece and Sardinia, while references to Sicily framed it as a secondary feint. British planners needed the papers to reach German intelligence without appearing intentionally delivered, making neutral Spain the ideal pathway. Spain officially remained neutral, yet German agents maintained connections there and often gained access to information recovered by local authorities. A submarine carried the body toward the Spanish coast, releasing it near Huelva before dawn, with a briefcase attached by chain. A fisherman discovered the body, and Spanish officials began handling the case while British representatives publicly requested the documents return. Those requests were deliberately anxious, encouraging anyone watching to believe the briefcase contained information Britain genuinely feared losing forever. Spanish authorities eventually returned the papers, but British examination showed they had probably been opened, studied, and carefully resealed. Intercepted communications later confirmed that German intelligence accepted the documents and passed their conclusions directly towards senior military leadership. Germany strengthened defenses in Greece, Sardinia, and surrounding areas, shifting attention and resources away from the Allies' actual destination. When Allied forces landed in Sicily during July 1943, defenders still faced a major invasion, but strategic confusion had weakened preparation. Operation Mincemeat succeeded because Major Martin felt human, complete with romance, bureaucracy, personal clutter, and mistakes that real people carry. The false officer needed more than secret plans. He needed an entire invisible life convincing enough to protect the visible lie. The operation also depended upon morally difficult choices involving the unidentified man's body, whose real history remained obscured for decades. Later research identified him as Glyndwr Michael, a homeless Welsh laborer whose death became entangled with one of history's boldest deceptions. His role deserves recognition because the operation's celebrated ingenuity relied upon a real person who never consented to become Major Martin. Mincemeat redirected German expectations before Sicily, but the next operation attempted something even larger, inventing an entire invasion force. To protect the Normandy landings, Allied planners would create phantom armies, false radio networks, double agents, and a commander Germany respected. That final bluff continued even after troops reached France, because the enemy still feared a larger attack that would never arrive. By early 1944, Germany knew an Allied invasion of Western Europe was coming, but uncertainty remained over its exact landing place. The shortest crossing pointed toward Pas-de-Calais, while Normandy offered weaker defenses but demanded a far more complicated maritime operation. Allied planners created Operation Fortitude to reinforce German expectations, presenting Norway and Pas-de-Calais as the principal invasion targets. Fortitude South invented the first United States Army group, supposedly gathering secretly in southeastern England under General George Patton. Patton's reputation made the Phantom Command believable, because German leaders considered him one of the Allies' most aggressive battlefield generals. Inflatable vehicles, dummy landing craft, controlled movements, and visible camp activity helped create convincing physical evidence for aerial reconnaissance. Radio operators generated enormous volumes of false. Before D-Day, Garbo delivered information carefully timed to protect his credibility without allowing German forces enough time to interfere. After Allied troops landed in Normandy, he insisted the operation was merely a diversion preceding the true invasion near Calais. That message supported Hitler's existing expectations and encouraged German commanders to keep powerful formations waiting for an attack that never came. German forces remained positioned around Pas-de-Calais even as the Normandy bridgehead expanded and Allied armies moved deeper into France. Fortitude succeeded because it did not ask Germany to believe something unfamiliar. It confirmed assumptions many German planners already preferred. Pas-de-Calais looked logical, Patton appeared dangerous, radio traffic sounded authentic, and double agents seemed to verify each other. Deception planners also monitored German reactions through intelligence, allowing them to adjust the fictional story whenever doubts or contradictions appeared. This feedback transformed deception into a conversation, with Germany unknowingly revealing which parts of the lie required stronger supporting evidence. The Phantom Army never fought, yet its imagined presence influenced real divisions, coastal defenses, reserves, and crucial decisions after D-Day. Unlike a single fake cannon or planted bag, Fortitude created an entire military reality distributed across maps, messages, photographs, and mines. Its greatest achievement was endurance, because the deception remained useful after Normandy began, delaying recognition that no second invasion was coming. Garbo later received honors from both sides, including a German medal, awarded because his handlers still believed he had served them faithfully. The irony was complete. Germany rewarded the agent whose invented network had helped keep German forces facing the wrong coastline. Fortitude did not win the Normandy campaign alone, but it strengthened the conditions allowing Allied troops to establish and expand their foothold. It proved the largest bluff requires thousands of small truths, each carefully arranged around one enormous and completely false conclusion. From painted timber to phantom armies, these deceptions succeeded by giving opponents evidence that matched fears already growing inside their minds. The Quaker Guns exploited caution, The Haversack exploited secrecy, Mincemeat exploited curiosity, while Fortitude exploited deeply rooted strategic expectation. None depended upon simple stupidity, because intelligent people can still be deceived when false information arrives through apparently independent channels. The best bluffs rarely demand belief in the impossible. They make one likely explanation appear slightly more convincing than another. Details created credibility, chipped paint, personal receipts, routine radio chatter, worried diplomatic requests, and commanders behaving exactly as expected. Once an enemy accepted the central story, every new observation became supporting evidence, while contradictions appeared temporary, accidental, or unimportant. That is why deception can outperform force, changing where armies wait, which roads they guard, and when commanders decide to move. However, military bluffs also carry uncertainty, because historians often struggle to measure exactly which particular lie influenced which decision. What remains undeniable is that imaginary weapons, fictional officers, planted papers, and non-existent armies repeatedly produced consequences in the real world. History's greatest bluffs worked not by hiding everything, but by showing enemies precisely the picture they were already prepared to see.